Hello, and welcome to the debut episode of Ontario Cold Cases, the podcast, brought to you by Nickel Investigations. To help continue our thorough investigations, please consider donating to our GoFundMe, which will be linked in the message part of this podcast. Once again, welcome to Ontario Cold Cases, the podcast that delves deep into the unsolved mysteries that haunt our province. I'm Jay Nickel, a private investigator with Nickel Investigations, and your host and guide in this journey through the chilling tales that have left investigators baffled and communities in search of answers. In each episode, we'll unearth the forgotten stories of Ontario's cold cases, exploring the details, the evidence, and the individuals involved with the eye of a private investigator who specializes in cold cases. From the mysterious disappearances to the perplexing murders, our mission is to shine a light in these cases and hopefully bring justice to those who have long awaited closure. But we can't do it alone. Join us as we navigate the twists and turns of these enigmatic cases. We'll speak with experts, law enforcement officials, and even the families of the victims, all in the pursuit of truth. So buckle up and prepare to dive headfirst into the world of unresolved mysteries. Together we'll keep the flame of hope burning for justice, one episode at a time. Thank you for tuning in to the Ontario Cold Cases, the podcast. Let's begin our quest for answers. This is a story about a pregnant 19-year-old named Valerie Stevens, who vanished in the early morning hours of Saturday, September 9th, 1989, after leaving her 17-month-old daughter in the care of a teenage couple. She left her apartment on Vendome Place near Don Mills Road and Eglinton Avenue to go dancing downtown at the Diamond Club on Sherbourne Street and was never seen alive again. Reports indicate that Valerie did meet up with her friends that night. Days later, the police were alerted of her disappearance by the teenage babysitters who had been taking care of her daughter for 4 days straight. After her disappearance, Stevens' welfare checks went uncashed and her bank account remained untouched. Stevens' skeletal remains were found over 3 years later on October 22, 1992, in a wooded area near Burford, Ontario, 100 kilometers southwest of Toronto. An autopsy failed to find the cause of death, but all signs led police to suspect murder. They suspect Stevens may be hitchhiking on Eglinton Avenue East near her home when she was picked up by her killer. Her father did believe his daughter had possibly become involved in drugs. Unable to find Valerie after spending a couple of days contacting various friends and relatives, her father finally went to the Toronto police. Some reports say it was actually Valerie's great aunt who went to the police and not her father. On October 22, 1992, bones were discovered by two hunters walking through some bush in Burford, Ontario's 5th concession. In addition to the bones, investigators found women's clothing near the site. A pair of black jeans and white lace-up boots, some reports say only one boot was found, were found near the body. Police at the time believed the woman died about 3 years prior. The skeleton was found buried under leaves 15 meters off the rural road, accessible through a small clearing in the bush. Investigators then used a technique called anthropometrics, in which a specialist with the Metro Toronto Police created a picture of the woman's face from the skull. A day after police released a reconstructed sketch of her, she was identified by her relatives as Valerie Stevens. At the time of her death, she was 4 months pregnant. Up next, the investigation and a possible serial killer connection. In January 1994, the Toronto Star did an investigation into 6 murders of women they believe may be connected. The Star originally focused on about 130 unsolved female murders in the province, and then further examined 6 of those slayings, women aged 15 to 25, all apparently randomly stalked between early spring and late summer, starting with Jenny Isford in 1982. Jenny Isford was 19 when she was murdered in May 1982. The second lady was Christine Prince, who was 25 when she was murdered in June 1982. The third is Delia Adriano, who was 17 when she was murdered in September 1982. The fourth, Linda Shaw, was 19 when she was murdered in April 1990. The fifth was Cindy Halliday, who was 17 when she was murdered in April 1992. And the sixth one is the one we are talking about today, Valerie Stevens, who was 19 when she was murdered in September 1989. Of those 6 murders, 2 were solved. The murder of Jenny Isford by William Brett Hansen, who was convicted in 1997, and the murder of Linda Shaw, in which serial killer Alan Craig MacDonald was convicted in 2005. While Jenny Isford wasn't abducted, there are similarities between her murder and the other 5. Apparent links, including the woman, could have been the victim of a serial killer. William Brett Hansen was convicted in 1997. Hansen was an appliance store clerk who lived with his mother. Court heard he had a lengthy criminal record for sexual assault and burglary. He sexually assaulted 3 women after murdering Isford. But in my opinion, Hansen doesn't quite fit, at least with the murder of Valerie Stevens. The FBI had found distinct patterns in the slayings. Over the years, detectives working on the Ontario slayings have cautiously and privately admitted the possibility that several of the killings could be linked. Investigators speculated on a possible connection between the Shaw and Halliday slayings, possibly over the car that was seen at the scene of the crime of each, and have focused on one suspect in his 20s who liked to travel. In the case of Valerie Stevens, witnesses near Brantford, which was near Burford, where Stevens' body was found, said they saw 2 men pulling up in a big cream white color car near a trailer park, and 3 women got out of the back, all dressed up in skirts like they were going out for the night. The car was described the same in all 3 murders. In August 2005, police determined that Linda Shaw had been murdered by Alan Craig MacDonald, who'd been in jail for 12 years after his conviction in a pair of slayings in Nova Scotia in 1977. In 1989, MacDonald was given full parole to a Brantford halfway house in 1989. Burford is about 15 minutes from Brantford. According to some, detectives said that MacDonald would drive drunks home in an old pickup, and he did not follow a curfew from the halfway house, and no one held him to a curfew as the staff were terrified of him. All the other murders remain unsolved. But as many as 4 other murders could be connected, according to the Star article. The bodies of 5 of the women were discovered in lovers' lanes, wooded remote areas down back roads often frequented by teenagers. No effort was made to conceal the bodies. In this case, it was all but Isford. At least 3 of the slayings indicate a fetish for neatness. Jackets folded neatly and shoes placed side by side at the murder scenes. That's Isford, Shaw, and Halliday. Most of the victims were transported many kilometers from where they were abducted, a pattern FBI crime experts suggest that could indicate the killer wanted control and dominance over his victims. 5 of the victims either vanished or were killed on a weekend or on a holiday weekend. The 6th was murdered on a Friday. 5 of the crimes took place at night, the 6th early evening. 2 of the women, Prince and Isford, were stalked after getting off a bus. A 3rd was apparently waiting for a bus. A 4th was hitchhiking at the end of a bus line. All but Adriano, who was abducted outside her home. Expressways figure in 5 of the slayings, either for stalking and transporting the victims or as a place to later dump the victims' belongings. All but Isford in this case. The killer kept personal effects from some of the victims, items of clothing, a shoe in the case of Valerie Stevens that we were talking about today, jewelry, a trait often seen in serial murders. American crime experts call such a person a trophy hunter, taking away a souvenir to help him relive the killing later. An FBI manual on sex slaying says that although a serial murder is planned, the victim is frequently a stranger and targeted because she is in a particular location, staked out by the offender, such as near bus stops, at a bar, or out driving alone. Serial killers often look for common characteristics in their victims, such as age, appearance, hairstyle, lifestyle, or according to the handbook prepared by the FBI. The offender may spend considerable time looking for the right victim, the manual says. In all 6 murders examined by the Star, the women were out at night alone. According to the FBI manual, seldom will a lust murderer use a firearm to kill, for he experiences too little psychosexual gratification with such an impersonal weapon. More frequently, death is from strangulation, blunt force, or use of a pointed, sharp weapon. Of the 6 victims, one was believed strangled, a second was believed to be strangled as well, 2 were stabbed, and 1 was bludgeoned. The cause of death was not established for the 6th, which was Valerie Stevens. Research by the Star found that one suspect, a one-time worm picker, could have been in the vicinity of as many as 4 of the 5 lovers' lanes. He had rented a farm about a 10-minute drive from where Stevens' body was found, according to the woman who was managing the property for the city of Brantford. The same man also frequented a downtown Toronto street corner, Carlton Sherburne Streets, where Stevens was often seen with friends, according to several acquaintances. They said the man had numerous dealings with a pornography dealer who lived near the corner. The suspect was also known to frequent the area where Halliday's body was found, according to several sources. He had loose ties with the Paradise Riders Motorcycle Club in the Barrie area, where Halliday's body was found, whose clubhouse was not far. The suspect also had driven on the road where Halliday was last seen and skied at a resort near where her remains were found. Up next, was this murder personal? Recently, my investigations found another suspect, a relative of Valerie Stevens that was later convicted in sexual assault charges. This was a relative of Valerie's that was known to have some strange predilections, like the keeping of seemingly random women's jewelry and problems with the law. He was said to have had an argument with Valerie about her going out that night. We'll refer to him as R and come back to him again shortly. Others feel one of Valerie's friends she was going to meet, and the girlfriend of hers that was babysitting, and her boyfriend, who I shall refer to with the initial of N, could possibly be involved. This gentleman I refer to as N did have family from the Brantford area, so he knew the area. The girl Valerie was to meet claimed she called Valerie home from a payphone in front of the club where they were to meet, inquiring where Valerie was or if she was on her way. But according to the OPP detective on the case, there were no calls incoming that night except for Valerie's on-again and off-again boyfriend calling collect from jail. This boyfriend has talked about finding a photo of a buff dude in jail on top of Valerie's fridge, and when he asked her about Valerie, explained her and a friend had pen pals in jail they would write to. Another witness came forward claiming Valerie had used their phone. Under hypnosis at the police station, the police confirmed the witness was telling the truth. Who was she calling? The same witness claims to have seen Valerie getting into an old pickup after she left his place, possibly blue with a loud muffler. Records do show that Valerie did make a local call out that night from home, but apparently the police were not able to determine whom the call was placed to. So stay tuned for what I think may have happened and why. So the big first question is, why did it take 4 days for the babysitters to go to anyone at all when Valerie hadn't returned home? Granted, I'm sure like many teenagers, they thought she would return the next day, but 4 days, that seems an awful lot. Then why go to Valerie's relatives instead of the police? I mean, for the baby's sake, I guess, but surely they could have done both. According to reports, both N and R did have some problems with Valerie. To what extent is debatable, but reports do say Valerie, N, and R all had tempers. Did Valerie actually make it home that night? I believe she did. In what state again, we'll never know. Was she drunk? Was she high? Who knows? But I do have a suspicion she got into a vehicle willingly with N and R, And something happened during this trip, and from this point, her body was driven to Burford, where her body was dumped. The location of the body this far off a quiet country road provides two possible clues. The obvious first being someone in prior knowledge of the area. In this case, it could very well be N, with his family being from the area. Second clue is that it was very likely two people to move her body from a vehicle to the location where her body was found. Just far too difficult, though not impossible, for one person to do this themselves. But it is far more likely it took two people. Likely when the body was being moved, the shoe was lost, likely falling inside the vehicle. Though perhaps it was kept as a trophy, it's hard to say. In my opinion, it seems it was far more likely people that were far closer to Valerie were the murderers, rather than a serial killer. Was it an accident? Was it on purpose? It's hard to say. I'd very much like to speak to anyone who found her remains, particularly the two men who found her. Contact information will be provided at the end of the podcast. The theory I present here is entirely my own, based upon an investigation I did. So this concludes the first episode of Ontario Cold Cases, the podcast. Hope you enjoyed it and will stay tuned for more. If you have any information regarding this case, please contact the OPP at 1-888-310-1122 or 1-800-222-TIPS, TIPS, or myself at jnicol@protonmail.com. That's spelled JAYNICOLL at protonmail.com. The next episode will be available next week. We'll connect to the murders that were mentioned in this podcast. That being the murder of Christine Prince, a Welsh nanny living in Toronto, who went out for a night with friends and was abducted and found murdered miles away from her home. Was she a victim of a serial killer? Some think she was. Stay tuned and find out in our next episode coming on Tuesday, October 17th. This episode is being brought to you by Nickel Investigations. Thank you for listening.